Hey guys, what's up? It's Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews. That's right, we're doing this review in black and white because we gotta talk about a movie that's shot in black and white. So I figured why not just shoot the review in black and white, because I am lazy and I can't come up with a decent gimmick to talk about this movie that everybody's talking about. Either way, I'm here to talk about the new Robert Eggers film, The Lighthouse. I just got out of a screening of this movie about almost 3 hours ago, and I needed a bit of time to sit and digest the film before talking about it. Now, before I really go into any detail, it's going to be one of those thoughts on videos where I kind of review the movie in kind of basic, simple terms. Then I get into some spoiler discussion, and, you know, this video is going to end up like 20 minutes long. Starting off, The Lighthouse is great. Go see it. That's all I have to say. I mean, I'm going to say more, but Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson have amazing chemistry on screen. They're absolutely just fucking great. The atmosphere and tone of this movie is really good. It's very dreary, and, you know, it's always raining, and it's very gloomy, and that's probably because it's shot in black and white. The film has an aspect ratio of, like, 1.18, 1 by 1.118, which is pretty much a perfect square. The writing is really good, very similar to the Robert Eggers' first film, The Witch. A lot of the dialogue is lifted directly from the period the film is set in. With The Witch, it was Old English. With this, it's a lot of, like, sea jargon from the 1800s. The plot involves these two lighthouse keepers who are essentially living on this island together, kind of, you know, taking care of the place. And, after a while, things start to become tense, and certain characters' sanities come into question. It's kind of an absolute trip. I think it's needless to say, but I really like this movie. It's surreal, cosmic, Lovecraftian, eldritch, dark, psychological horror comedy, like absurdist comedy. Like, this is probably one of the funniest movies I've seen this year, and it's also one of the best horror films I've seen this year. What else am I gonna say? Okay. Either way, this is a movie that after I saw it, like right after it ended, I was like, man, I'm kind of disappointed. That really wasn't, you know, what I wanted from it. And then, like, after sitting in the theater for a few minutes and thinking about it, I was like, okay, you know what? This could grow on me. And then on the car ride home, I was like, yeah, I think I like this movie. And now I'm sitting here with an adamant stance of this is a really great movie, pretty much a masterpiece in its own right, albeit not as good as The Witch, and not as scary or creepy or atmospheric as The Witch. But to compare the two is kind of counterintuitive, because The Witch is this dark, mysterious, creepy, slow burn horror film, and The Lighthouse is this, I mean, by comparison, almost manic, wild as hell, absurd, cosmic horror comedy. I swear to God, if Willem Dafoe doesn't win an Oscar for this movie, something's gonna happen. Bad things will happen. Either way, I'm gonna give this movie like a fucking 9 out of 10, and say right now it's probably it's definitely one of, if not my favorite horror film this year so far. You know, it's right now it's kind of a tie between this and Climax, because Climax was definitely scarier and more distressing and uncomfortable, but this film was going for something completely different, and it hit the nail on the head. Okay. Either way, that's the end of the review portion. Now I'm going to go into some spoiler discussion, just talk about things I liked. So if you don't want to get the movie spoiled for you, stop watching now. and there is the warning. Okay, so one of my favorite things about this movie is the fact that, you know, you go into the movie expecting Willem Dafoe's character, Thomas, you expect him to be the crazy one here. You expect him to turn out to be the crazy guy, the one who is, like, obsessed with this lighthouse, and maybe even has some connection to, you know, some elder gods within the Cthulhu mythos or something. You expect this guy to be crazy. And then, as the film goes on, as the main character, who is supposed to be the straight man, who is supposed to be the one you are supposed to think is sane, as the film goes on, he starts to lose his shit, and it kind of becomes a back and forth of who's crazier than who is imaginary, who's real, who is dead, who isn't, what's going on, you know, who's actually crazy and losing track of time here, and it's almost like a cat and mouse game of unintentional cat and mouse, because they aren't even really setting each other up for this confusion. They're just kind of stumbling into it. The dinner scenes in this movie are, like, almost on par with Eraserhead in terms of, like, wild-ass, surreal, absurdist horror dinner scenes. You know, if you've seen Eraserhead, if you've seen the scene in Eraserhead where Henry meets Mary's parents, every dinner scene in this movie is like that, except the dialogue isn't entirely non sequiturs, and instead is old seaman kind of like sailor jargon, and yeah, it's fucking wild. I'm gonna need another beer. There's a certain moment in the film that I really, really loved, where Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, they're just kind of sitting there talking back and forth, and Robert Pattinson's character's like really shit-faced, and he's talking about how, like, man, if we had fresh food on the island, it would be really nice, you know, and he mentions how if I had a steak, a raw bloody steak, I'd fuck it. And everybody in the theater erupted in laughter. I was laughing, the person who was with me was laughing. It was fucking great. And then right after that, you get another moment that I think is even funnier, just for the sheer kind of absurdity of it, where these two characters, Winslow and Thomas, get into an argument over whether or not Winslow likes Thomas's cooking, and it eventually just comes down to, well, you like my lobster, don't you? You like my lobster. And they're just like, and then, like, the scene that is featured a tidbit of in the trailer, where, you know, Thomas stands up and he's like, damn ye, may Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow. Hark! And he just goes on like a 2-minute long tangent, staring directly into the fucking camera, as he delivers this long tangent about how he curses how he curses Robert Pattinson's character, Winslow, to die a horrible, painful death as a result of King Neptune striking him down, and his corpse rotting at the bottom of the ocean, and essentially becoming the ocean after rotting into the ocean. It's wild. It's so fucking ridiculous. And at that point in the movie, as I was watching it, you know, and as I was watching it, the lighting, like, gets kind of intense, almost stylized, or at least that's how I remember it being. And I'm looking at Willem Dafoe's character, and I suddenly get this disconnect. This disconnect that, like, I completely just bought it. You know, I completely believed that I was watching some candid conversation almost. Like, it didn't feel like I was looking at Willem Dafoe. And similar things happen to that, with similar things like that happen with Robert Pattinson's character. There's there's a scene later on in the film where he's insulting Thomas and saying, like, oh, all you've ever said is bullshit, you're not a sailor, you've never been a sea captain, you're just some old asshole who, he says you smell of jism and piss and curdled foreskin and your farts, your goddamn farts. Like, that's something I need to mention too. There are fart jokes in this movie, and when they first happened, I was like, I don't know how to feel about that. And as it went on, I just completely was just on board for it. I was completely into it at that point. I was like, yeah, fart. Willem Dafoe farts again. Comedy gold. Like, there's a mermaid in this movie, which I didn't even realize there was gonna be a mermaid in the movie until I watched the trailer for like the 6 millionth time. But there's a mermaid that shows up in this movie that Robert Pattinson's character fucks, and you see some mermaid vagina, and it's just like one of the most bizarre visuals in the whole film. There's this very extended scene of Robert Pattinson's character like shirtless, wearing overalls, drinking like a bottle of straight rum in a fucking dirty shed in front of a like metropolis looking machine with all these gears, and he's fucking beating his dick, and he's just like, and it's cutting between like images of the naked mermaid washed up on the shore and him fucking it and its vagina and all these sea creatures and tentacles. It's fucking wild. It is out there. I also got to mention that this movie, it literally ends with Winslow finally, you know, getting into the top of the lighthouse like he's wanted to do pretty much since the beginning of the movie. And he ends up burning his hands trying to touch the light within the lighthouse. And he falls down the fucking stairs of the lighthouse and dies. He fucking dies by accidentally falling down the stairs when he burns his hand after putting a fucking axe through the face of Willem Dafoe. That is how this movie ends. What can I say? Can I say anything? Do I have to say anything? Also, there's some, you know, imagery in this film relating to penises, and also there's some weird homoerotic undertones that are kind of very interesting to see in this movie. Like, I heard they were there, but I just kind of assumed that, like, that was just something that people were, like, kind of just, you know, putting in the film because it's a film about two guys living on an island together. But no, there are homoerotic undertones there. I don't know what to say. I'm actually out of things to say about this movie. I wanted to say something else, but I think I've lost it. Oh, there's a scene, like a trailer that was being advertised on Facebook, which was basically just a clip of the film, well, you know, multiple clips of the film, but edited to be like a complete scene, where Robert Pattinson's character is being harassed by a seagull, and this seagull shows up, you know, and pisses him off one too many times. And in the, you know, in the trailer, he strangles the seagull, and it's just like, oh wow, that's wild, that's crazy. And in that same trailer, Willem Dafoe's character is like, it's bad luck to kill seabird. They contain the souls of sailors that have died and met their maker. And I expected it just to be like a quick cut, like how it is in the trailer. I expected it to be a quick cut after he grabs the fucking seagull. But no, he fucking starts beating it against the rock. And for what felt like a minute straight, but it was probably more like 10-15 seconds, he continues to beat the fucking gull against the rock until it is a ragged, bloody mess. And it is so, like, equally disturbing and hilarious. And I love it. Something else I've got to say is that this film is actually kind of inspired by a real incident that happened in 1801, where two lighthouse keepers in, I think, Wales, got stranded on an island, and they were both named Thomas, and they both killed each other. Also, I got to mention that it turns out that Robert Pattinson's character Winslow is actually assuming the identity of somebody that it's assumed he killed but it's also assumed like he just, didn't save this guy when he fell in the water and he drowned. But he assumes the identity of a dead man, and his name is actually Thomas. So this movie is kind of heavily inspired by that and cosmic horror. It's an absolute wild ride. I highly recommend you check it out, especially if you liked The Witch. Not that this is similar to The Witch, because it is like nothing like The Witch, but it's crazy to see this film, because it's like Robert Eggers is trying to do a Yorgos Lanthimos film. It's like he's trying to do something like Dogtooth or The Lobster. Like, it feels like he's trying to do something in the vein of that, with it being a dark, absurdist comedy. This movie is like a blending of, like... This movie is a blend of stuff like Eraserhead and... like Eraserhead, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and, like the works of H.P. Lovecraft, all combined and starring Willem Dafoe, which, that's just one big plus right there. I think that's it for this one. I don't think I have much else to say about this film, so I'm gonna go ahead and just end it here. Anyway, guys, this is Biscaboo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.